Good morning everyone. Welcome to class 20 and third part of moving charges and magnetism. In the last class we have seen Biot-Savart's law, its applications, Ampere's law, proof of Ampere's law, and difference between Ampere's circuital law and Biot-Savart's law. And Biot-Savart's law. Now we are going to see the applications of Ampere's circuital law. So solenoid is the one of the main application of Ampere's circuital law. So solenoid means we already studied in lower classes. A solenoid is a coil of wire designed to create strong magnetic field inside the coil. In lower classes we studied about this solenoid which is used to produce strong magnetic field. So this solenoid is a coil of wire designed to create strong magnetic field inside the coil. By wrapping the same wire many times around a cylinder, the magnetic field due to these wires can become quite strong. So in solenoid the core material is ferromagnetic material. What is ferromagnetic material? We study about these types of magnetic materials in the magnetism and matter. So for now we can understand that ferromagnetic material is a strong magnetic material. So that it concentrates magnetic lines of flux. So if you place a strong magnetic material inside the solenoid, the magnetic field increases to a maximum. So the increase in the induction of the coil is far beyond the induction obtained when air core coil of the same dimensions and the same number of turns. So when we use a ferromagnetic material, the magnetic field produced will be increasing many number of times when compared with the magnetic field due to air core coil of same dimensions and the same number of turns. If you see this solenoid is connected to a cell, how this magnetic lines of force will be developed inside this solenoid, you can see clearly from this slide. So this side becomes this side current flows in this direction. We can apply that screw rule to determine the polarity of this phase. Here the south pole will be developed as the current flowing in this in clockwise direction. So lines of force will enter into this phase, and here the anti-clockwise direction. So the current flows in anti-clockwise direction, and the phase polarity of this phase will be north pole. So in this solenoid, this phase will behave like a north pole and this phase will behave like a south pole. Now we can apply Ampere's circuital law to determine the magnetic field generated by this solenoid. Assume that this is the solenoid. Here the base, the bottom part of this solenoid contains cross, means which in this that electric lines of force will enter into this part, and the upper part is given with the dotted line. So electric lines of force will come out of this part. So electric force, this electric lines of force will come, the current will flow out of this upper part and goes into the lower part. So like this in a sequential order the current flows through the solenoid. So in this particular solenoid, assume a square shaped surface A, B, C, D in between at the middle part of this solenoid. Now, so considering the rectangular or square part, any shape we can consider here, rectangular or square closed path A, B, C, D, A, applying Ampere's circuital law over that loop. So line integral of B bar dot dl bar, total line integral of B bar dot dl bar is equal to mu naught times the total current passing through that loop ABCD. Now we can divide that entire loop into four parts. So integral A to B, here if you see A to B, B dot dl, integral B to C, B bar dot dl, integral C to D, B bar dot dl, and integral D to A, B bar dot dl. So we can divide this entire structure into four parts and we can apply line integral to that loop is equal to mu naught into I. Actually if you apply Ampere circuit law, you will get mu naught into I. If that loop is a fixed shape and current is circulating at that same path, then we can apply mu naught into I. But here it is a solenoid, so current is traveling in a helical path. So we have to consider the length of that path traveled by that current. So we can consider mu naught I into L is the total length of the solenoid and N by L is the number of turns per unit length. So we can consider this number of turns per unit length of the solenoid and we can find out this equation, mu naught into I into number of turns per unit length into length. So here number of turns should be considered. So this equation can be written as mu naught into N by L into L into I. So in detail it is given here, N by L is the number of turns per unit length. Again I am saying we can use mu naught into I if that current is circulating at the same path only. But here in solenoid, the current is traveling across the length of the solenoid. So we have to consider number of turns and as well as the length of the solenoid. So we have to rearrange this equation mu naught into I as this form. So mu naught into N by L into I. Here N is the number of turns per unit length and L is the total length of that rectangular part. Here we are calculating for this particular part. So we can consider L as the rectangular part and N by L is the number of turns per unit length in that rectangular part. Later we can calculate the integral for this entire solenoid, entire length of the solenoid. Now apply the integral to this integral a to b, b dl cos theta. Here a to b, the current flowing in the same direction and the magnetic field also flowing in same direction. B and dl both are in same direction, so cos 0 we can consider here. For second integral b to c, magnetic field is in horizontal direction and dl is in vertical direction, so we can write cos 90 plus here there is no magnetic field outside the solenoid, so that value is 0. So again from D to A, length is in vertical direction, magnetic field is in horizontal direction, so cos 90. So is equal to mu naught N by L into I. So out of 4 integral values, all 3 will become 0, only one integral will be left over, that is integral a to b, b dot dl, which is equal to mu naught into N by L into I. So here after simplification, b into L, here we are not supposed to consider 2 pi r because 2 pi r is the length of that circular path. Here we have to consider the length of the solenoid, so it should be L only. So b into L is equal to mu naught N by L into I. So if you simplify this equation, you will get b is equal to mu naught N by L into I, or we can write it as b is equal to mu naught N I, where small n is the replacement of this capital N by L. Instead of writing capital N by L, number of turns per unit length, we can write it as small n. Okay, so this is the equation for magnetic field of a solenoid. We can calculate the magnetic field of this solenoid using this Ampere circuit law. So remember this equation, b is equal to mu naught N into I, or b is equal to mu naught number of turns per unit length into I. Now in this diagram we can see the variation of magnetic field across the total length of the solenoid. So at the center of the solenoid, the magnetic field is constant. As we can come near to this faces of this solenoid, the magnetic field reduces to half on both of the faces of the solenoid. So the magnetic field at the ends of the solenoid is weaker, so it is half of the central region within that solenoid. So we can write b dash is equal to half into b. So I can write mu naught N by L into I, N by 2 into L into I. So mu naught N I by 2. So here at the end faces of this solenoid, the magnetic field is half, and at the central part of the solenoid, the magnetic field is B, which is mu naught N I. Remember that equation. So another equation where another situation where we can apply Ampere circuit law is toroid. Toroid means it is simply a bent solenoid. So in solenoid we can have a magnetic field in a linear form, But here we don't find that magnetic field in a linear form. Here the magnetic field is in a circular path, and especially this center of this toroid, there is no magnetic field. Only the magnetic field will be circulating along this length of this toroid. So to find the magnetic field at a distance r from the center of the toroid. So here r is the point where we have to determine the value of magnetic field. So the toroid has n number of turns. There is no length for this toroid, so we can consider only number of turns, capital N. So integral by applying Ampere's circuital law, integral b bar dot ds or dl is equal to b into 2 pi r, which is equal to mu naught n I. 2 pi r is the total length of this magnetic field. So b into 2 pi r is equal to mu naught n I, or b is equal to mu naught n I by 2 pi r. So this is the equation for magnetic field due to a toroid, which can be calculated by using Ampere's circuital law. So coming on to next part of this unit. In previous parts we studied about Biot-Savart's law and Ampere's circuital law. Now we are going to study about the behavior of a charged particle in combined electric and magnetic fields. So whenever a current carrying conductor is placed in the magnetic field, it experiences force. So which means that a charged particle, when it is placed in the magnetic field, it experiences the force. So what is the magnitude of the force and what is the direction of the force? That can be calculated by using this Lorentz equation. So which is given by F is equal to Q into V bar cross B bar. As force is a vector quantity, so we can write this vector form of this force, which is given by Q into V bar cross B bar. Here V is the velocity of the charged particle entering into the magnetic field, and this velocity is acting on B. So we can write V bar cross B bar. So, or we can write F is equal to BQV sin theta into n cap. N cap is the vector which is perpendicular to both V and B. For example, if you see the diagram here, the charged particle is entering into the magnetic field along z-axis. Assume that it is along z-axis. Magnetic field is acting along x-axis. Then the charged particle will experience force along this y-axis, which is perpendicular to both x-axis and as well as z-axis. So the equation for force is BQV sin theta into n cap, and the direction of the force acting on this charged particle is perpendicular to both the magnetic field and as well as the path velocity of that charged particle. So if the charge is at rest, then velocity will be 0 and force acting on that particle also equals to 0. So stationary charge in the magnetic field does not experience any force. If theta is equal to 0 or 180, it means if the charged particle is moving parallel or anti-parallel to the direction of magnetic field, in that case also there is no force, because sin 0 and sin 180 both are equal to 0. If theta equal to 90 degrees, the charged particle will be move perpendicular to the magnetic field, then the force is maximum. So maximum force is given by BQV. Here theta is the angle between the charged particle and the velocity of the charged particle and the magnetic field. So with simple assumption, we can determine the force acting on the charged particle, which is Fleming's left hand rule. This rule already was studied in lower classes. So how to define this rule, everyone knows. Stretch your thumb, forefinger and central finger in 3 mutually perpendicular directions, and central finger indicates the direction of the current, forefinger indicates the direction of magnetic field, then thumb gives the direction of force acting on the charged particle. As I said in the previous slide, if the velocity of the charged particle is along this z-axis and B is acting along x-axis, then force experienced by that charged particle will be along y-axis. So that can be easily determined using this Fleming's left hand rule. Now we are going to see the behavior of charged particles, both positive charge and negative charge, in the magnetic field when they are entering perpendicular to the direction of magnetic field by using this Fleming's left hand rule. Here the two charged particles, one is positive charge and negative charge, entering into the magnetic field. If you apply Fleming's left hand rule for the positively charged particle, especially the Fleming's left hand rule is used to determine the direction of force acting on positively charged particle only. When we stretch the central finger, forefinger and thumb in mutually perpendicular directions, the direction of force is given for the positively charged particle only. So for negatively charged particle, the direction will be opposite. So if you apply that Fleming's left hand rule, then it will be easy for you to understand that the charged particle will move in upward direction. This is positively charged particle will move in upward direction. So obviously negatively charged particle will move in downward direction. These are the path traversed by this charged particles in the magnetic field when they are entering perpendicular to the direction of magnetic field. If a positively charged particle enters into the magnetic field with an angle theta other than 90, then the particle will experience this helical path. Here velocity of the charged particle is given by v bar, so that velocity can be resolved into parallel and as well as perpendicular components. So this is the path traversed by the positively charged particle in magnetic field when it is entering with an angle theta. Now we are going to see the important term relating to this helical path, which is called as pitch. So the velocity component perpendicular to the magnetic field creates the circular motion of the particle, whereas the component of the velocity parallel to the field makes the particle to move along the straight line path. So here the pitch is the horizontal distance between the two consecutive circles. So resulting in the motion is helical. So if this path is the helical path, then pitch can be determined as the distance between these two concentric circles. So what is the equation for pitch? We can calculate using these equations. So P is equal to, here T is the time period of revolution of the particle. We can calculate the time period in cyclotron. So T is the time period of revolution of the particle into V parallel component is V cos theta. So time period of the particle is 2 pi m by bq. So 2 pi m by bq into V cos theta. So this is the equation to calculate the pitch of that charged particle. So here mass of the positively charged particle, charge of the positively charged particle, B is the magnetic field, and theta is the angle to which the particle entering into the magnetic field. Another important factor we can consider here when a particle is entering into the combined electric and magnetic fields. So the factor is velocity selector. Assume that electric field and magnetic field are placed perpendicular to each other, and a charged particle is entering perpendicular to both electric and magnetic fields. So the force experienced by the charged particle in electric field is EQ, and force experienced by the charged particle in magnetic field is BQV. So when both are equal in magnitude and opposite in direction, what will be the equation for velocity of the particle? We can see using this velocity selector. So velocity selector is a device with a perpendicular arrangement of electric and magnetic fields used as a velocity filter for the charged particles. So velocity selector exploits the principle of motion of the charged particle in magnetic field. According to this, force experienced by the charged particle in magnetic field is BQV, and force experienced by the charged particle in electric field we have already seen, QEQ. So if you equate these two, we will get velocity of the particle V is equal to E by B, where E is the intensity of the electric field and B is the intensity of the magnetic field. So we can calculate the velocity of the charged particle which is coming out of this velocity selector as the ratio of intensity values of both electric and magnetic fields. So we are going to see about the device which works on the combined electric and magnetic fields is a cyclotron. So cyclotron is defined as the type of particle accelerator in which charged particles accelerate outwards from the center along a spiral path. These particles are held to a spiral trajectory by the static magnetic field and accelerated by the rapidly varying electric field. So here electric field is varying according to that time varying electric fields, and magnetic field becomes stationary. So cyclotron accelerates the charged particle beam using a high frequency alternating voltage which is applied between the two hollow D-shaped sheet metal electrodes called Ds inside a vacuum chamber. We can see the structure in the next slide. The Ds are placed face to face with a narrow gap between them, creating a cylindrical space within them for the particle to move. Then the particles are injected into the center of the space. The magnetic field causes the particle to bend in a circular path due to a Lorentz force perpendicular to their direction of motion. So this is the arrangement of this cyclotron. The particles are allowed to start from the center part of this two D-shaped structures which are placed in a vacuum. So once the charged particle is once here high frequency alternating voltage is applied, usually we can apply positively charged particle. So when positive charged particle is there, this D will become positively charged, so it will accelerate towards negatively charged D shape. So due to the magnetic field which is placed vertically in vertical direction, the particle traces out a circular path. When it enters here, the frequency of that voltage increases, and this D becomes positively charged and this D becomes negatively charged. So obviously the charged particle will be attracted by the negative D, and due to that high frequency it can travel with high radius, maximum radius. So like that, due to this varying high frequency voltages, the particle traverse out this helical path and finally comes out of this part of this D-shaped structure with very high speed. So this is the structure, construction and working of this cyclotron. So this is the theory behind the cyclotron. The magnetic force experienced by the charged particle provides the centripetal force required to describe the circular path. So centripetal force is given by mv square by r, which is equal to bqv sin 90, which is 1. So this is the equation for velocity of the particle. Here time taken by the particle to describe semicircular path inside the D is given by pi r by v. Actually it is for complete circle we can write 2 pi r by v. Semicircle means we can write pi r by v. So if substitute the value of v, we can get time t is equal to pi m by bq. Here t is the time period of high frequency oscillator. Then for resonance we have to consider 2 halves of this time. So total time period will be 2 into t. So time period t is equal to 2 pi m by bq. Frequency of this oscillator we can calculate using the reciprocal of this time period. So frequency f is equal to bq by 2 pi m. So here we calculated velocity, time taken by the particle to complete 1 half d, 1 d. So total path covered by the particle will be 2t, 2 d it is covering, so it is 2t. So time period and finally frequency. So kinetic energy of the charged particle we can calculate using this half mv square. So half m into v value already we calculated square. So we can get b square q square r square by 2m. So this is the equation for maximum kinetic energy of the charged particle when capital R is equal to small r, means it is the radius of the D from which the particle is coming out. So the expression for time period of cyclotron frequency only when it is remaining constant. Frequency only when mass of the charged particle remains constant. Mass of the charged particle should not be varied for this to get this maximum kinetic energy of the charged particle. But here the velocity with which the particle is moving is very high. So if high velocity charged particles are moving, obviously its mass changes according to this relativistic equation for mass, which is given by Einstein. So m is equal to m naught by 1 minus v square by c square whole power 1 by 2. So if frequency is varied by synchronization with the variation of mass of the charged particle to have resonance, then cyclotron is called synchrocyclotron. So mass also it can go through that one, and its frequency will be altered. So that type of cyclotron is called as synchrocyclotron. So if magnetic field is varied in synchronization with the variation of mass of the charged particle to have resonance, then cyclotron is called asynchronous cyclotron. So here one important point: cyclotron cannot be used to accelerate neutral particles, as they don't have any charge. They cannot cover that circular path, and electrons cannot be accelerated because their mass is very much less and they gain high velocity inside the D itself, so they cannot traverse out that circular path. So electrons cannot be used. Mostly the cyclotron is used to accelerate only positively charged particles, that too especially protons. So here one important point you have to remember, frequency is varied in synchronization with the variation of the mass, it is synchrocyclotron. And if magnetic field is varied in synchronization with the variation of mass, then it is called as isochronous cyclotron. These 2 points are important regarding this cyclotron. So what are the uses of this cyclotron? The high energy particles produced in the cyclotron are used to bombard nuclei and to study the resulting nuclear reactions, and hence investigate the nuclear structure. In nuclear physics, this cyclotron can be used to study the structure of the nucleus by accelerating the charged particles. Second one, high energy particles are used to produce other high energy particles such as neutrons by collisions. These fast neutrons are used in atomic reactors. We are using nuclear reactors, in that high speed neutrons can be generated with the help of some charged particles. So using this cyclotron, that can happen to produce high speed neutrons. Second one, it is used to implant ions into solids to modify the properties, even to synthesis of new materials. So here in second point, as I said, neutrons has no charge, but how they can be used to accelerate this neutrons means, positively charged particles can be used to accelerate this positively charged particles can be accelerated using this cyclotron, and they will come out of the cyclotron and collide with the neutrons. Thereby neutrons get that energy. The collisions will be elastic collisions, so thereby the neutrons get that energy and they can be used in nuclear reactors. So here in order to synthesize new materials, these ions can be implanted into the solids to modify their properties. In that case also the cyclotrons are used. So we studied about a lot of important points today. In that, first one is solenoid. So magnetic field produced by the solenoid. Equation for magnetic field of the solenoid by using Ampere circuit law. Variation of magnetic field across the length of the solenoid. Toroid. Magnetic field due to this toroid. Behavior of charged particle in combined electric and magnetic fields. Force acting on the charged particle in a magnetic field. Equation for pitch of that helical structure. Velocity selector. Cyclotron, its construction. Theory behind the working of cyclotron. And finally uses of this cyclotron. So all these topics what we discussed today are very much important. Please go through these topics thoroughly. Thank you.